Today's talk is not directly about science, it's more about morality and ethics, I suppose. We were talking to Dr. Asim Malhotra recently, and he mentioned the principles of public life, the so-called Nolan principles. So I thought we'd look at these, and I'd like you to think about it and make some adjudication in your own mind to decide if we've been let down by our public officials and those in authority in a spectacular way. But don't let me influence you. Look at them yourselves and see what you think. So 7 Nolan principles of public life. Now this is on the British government website here, and this is posted on the government website live this morning, and there's nothing on it to say it's sarcastic. There's nothing on it to say this is an exercise in irony. It's just given straight from the UK government website. And again, let me know what you think. And these principles should apply to all in authority, of course, not just the British government. But the British government are on officially on their website. And it comes from the Committee on the Standards in Public Life. I've put the links in there as usual. Click on them and you'll go directly. Right, first principle, selflessness. Holders of public office should act solely in terms of the public interest. This would completely, of course, preclude conflicts of interest. It would completely preclude people having financial interests in various businesses or various vested interests. That would be precluded by that. Has this always been the case? So solely in terms of the public interest. Selflessness is the first principle of public life. Second principle of public life, integrity. Holders of public office must avoid placing themselves under any obligation, no obligation at all, any obligation to people or organisations. People or organisations. This would include, billionaires, philanthropists, individuals of any sort, political leaders, or organisations that might try inappropriately to influence them in their work. We want zero inappropriate influence in public officials and public people's work. They should not take decisions in order to gain financially or other material benefits for themselves, their family, or their friends. This completely precludes cronyism. Mates rates, precluded completely by this. Has this always been the case? I hear you ask. They must declare and resolve any interests and relationships. Declare. Now, we've had so many times where people, in government, people in mainstream media might have forgotten to declare particular interests. Anyone can forget. But there should be an attempt to strive for full declaration and full transparency, as we've been calling for a long time. Full transparency is required. Objectivity. Holders of public office must act and take decisions impartially, without any undue influence, fairly and on merit, perhaps on the scientific merits or the medical merits of the case, using the best evidence without discrimination or bias. And I think you must agree, at least I certainly agree, that Lord Nolan, who we'll look at in a minute, has worded this really quite nicely. He was the first chair of this Committee on Committee on Standards in Public Life committee. Sadly, no longer with us. Let's go on. Accountability. Holders of public office are accountable to the public for their decisions. Well, there's some people might be getting a full presidential pardon any day now. Are they going to be accountable to the public for their decisions and actions? Must submit themselves to the scrutiny necessary to ensure this. Are people open to scrutiny, to critique, to argumentation? Maybe not always, to be quite honest. Openness. Holders of public office should act and take decisions in an open and transparent manner. Information should not be withheld from the public. just rings so true, doesn't it? Information should not be withheld from the public unless there's a clear and lawful reason for doing so. Oh, that must be it. All this information that's been withheld, there must be a clear and lawful reason for doing so. Pity we haven't always been informed what that reason is, but there you go. We're only the plebs. We're only the ordinary people, the plebeian class, the hoi polloi. Honesty. Holders of public office should be truthful. It's just so obviously true, isn't it? So obviously true, but who knows? Maybe you can think of occasions when it hasn't always been fully implemented. Who knows? Leadership. Holders in public office should exhibit these principles in their own behaviour. Oh, I don't know. That might include things like not breaking COVID rules and going for a liaison with one of your assistants. It could include anything like that. Who knows what this means in particular circumstances? Holders of a public office should exhibit these principles in their own behaviour and treat others with respect. Treat others with respect. Do as you would be done by. What the heck is wrong with that principle? Nothing, of course. They should actively promote and robustly support the principles and challenge poor behaviours whenever it occurs. So not only should people in public life not take part in poor behaviours, they should challenge poor behaviour whenever it occurs. I mean, this is real motherhood and apple pie, isn't it? There's nothing to disagree with here, of course. And yet, a little more detail before we look at some other relevant thinking. The 7 principles of public life, also known as the Nolan Principles, apply to anyone who works in as a public office holder. This is from Law Lord Michael Patrick Nolan. I think he died quite a few years ago now, 2008 from memory, I think. This includes all those who are elected or appointed to public life nationally and locally. No exceptions. No exceptions for important people. No exceptions for clever people. It applies to all. And all people appointed to work in the civil service, local government, the police, the courts and probation service. So the courts should be applied to these. Everything should apply to these. In the health and education, social and care services, these should apply. Is that the case at the moment? I hear you asking. Now, of course, I'm not talking about any particular jurisdiction. These are in the UK government website, but you could apply these to wherever you live. Of course. All public office holders are both servants of the public, servants of the public. They're to serve the public. Where is this concept of public service gone? And stewards of public resources. That means not blowing our public cash on silly things. I don't know, awarding contracts to your mates, for example. That would be unthinkable under the Nolan Principles. Awarding contracts to a company that a particular official might have a financial interest in. Unthinkable under Lord Nolan's excellent principles. Maybe many mighty have fallen. Now, the banality of evil. Banal. This comes from Hannah Arendt. She wrote about Eichmann in Jerusalem, a report on the banality of evil, the New York in 1963. Adolf Eichmann, of course, was a great instigator of the final solution from 1940 to 1945. In fact, earlier than that, 1939, really. And he didn't get his hands dirty himself. He was a bureaucrat, an administrator. Now, Hannah, in her piece, actually quite interesting, seems to think that Eichmann was somehow detached and in a lesser way responsible. I'm not. Don't let me double guess her, but she seems to almost think that because Eichmann was detached, he wasn't directly involved. Read the article for yourself. I'll put a link there to a discussion of it. But I don't think there's any excuse for him. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. And I think a lot of these people in senior offices know exactly what they're doing. And as Lord Nolan says, accountability should be exercised. And of course, in Eichmann's case, accountability was finally exercised in Jerusalem in 1963, I believe it was. C.S. Lewis, preface to the Screwtape Letters, written in 1942. The greatest evil is not now done in those sordid dens of crime that Charles Dickens, loved to paint. It is not done in the concentration camps and labour camps, not even done in the concentration camps and labour camps. In those we see its final results. So yes, we do see the evil final results, but that's not where it originates, according to Lewis in 1942. But is conceived and ordered, moved, seconded, carried and minuted in clean, carpeted, warmed and well-lighted offices by quiet men with white collars and cut fingernails and smooth shaven cheeks who do not need to raise their voices. The banality of evil. Quiet men don't even need to shout about it. And yet the outworkings of this, in the example that Lewis was talking about, were in the death camps and the labour camps. Let's leave the last word to the prophet. Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Let's get rid of this duplicity, this hypocrisy, this doublespeak. Let's get rid of that. Who put darkness for light and light for darkness. Who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Let's stop saying the opposite of what we mean. I just feel immensely let down. And I know a lot of you do too. But hey, not for me to tell you what to think. Let me know what you think. And thanks to C.S. Lewis, one of the great writers and thinkers of the 20th century, in my view.